Hey gang, Lisa here. The whirlwind that was the 2025 award season has wrapped up with the conclusion of the 97th Oscars. This year's event brought its share of surprises and snubs, which, as you all know, are my favorite part of any award show. And we witnessed some significant moments in Oscar history as well.
Anora, Sean Baker.
Anora, Sean Baker.
Anora, Sean Baker!
Anora.
I'm eager to dive into my thoughts on this year's winners and all the notable highlights. There's a lot to unpack about the overall production, but I'll save that for another video. Today, I want to focus on my reactions to each of the 23 categories and how each of the films performed against their nomination. Now, make sure to stick around until the end, as I've saved the biggest, the most thrilling surprise for last. Now, let's dive right in.
I won't waste time. I won't waste time.
Seriously though, let's start out with what an amazing night Anora had. I mean, an Anora sweep. Wow. 5 of its 6 Oscar nominations? I mean, its only loss was in the supporting actor category. And to be honest, Yuri Borsovol had no chance of beating Kieran from A Real Pain. Nor was he going to beat out Guy Pearce, Jeremy Strong, or Edward Norton. But as Robert Downey Jr. put it,
breakthrough performance, welcome to the big time, brother. You have a bright future, you're in the right place. Am I correct? Yes.
There's no doubt we'll be seeing more of Yuri in the future. That Anora sweep was absolutely incredible. And I'll be honest, I didn't see it coming. If you watch my predictions video, I expected it to win nothing, which means I don't look like a rock star. I look like I've been living under a rock this entire award season. However, to my credit, I did not anticipate that the Academy would end up honoring a movie about sex workers, yet I am so glad it did. I mean, if I had to lose my predictions to something, I'm happy it was to Anora. Now, let's get into making history. Sean Baker made history on Sunday night by winning 4 Oscars in a single year, all for the exact same film. He truly is an artist. I mean, he wrote, directed, edited, and produced this film for under $6 million. And he did it all with only 40 staff people. Like, 40 people made that movie, and that's including the performers. Wow. Previously, there have been a few people to walk away with 4 or more Oscars in one evening. Walt Disney, who is the person with the most competitive Oscar wins. He's got like 22. That's a lot. He took home 4 Oscars at the 26th Annual Academy Awards in 1954, yet that was for 4 different films. He won Best Documentary Feature for Waterbirds, Best Documentary Short for The Living Desert, Best Short Subject Cartoon for Toot, Whistle, Plunk, and Plume, and Best Subject Short 2 Reel for Bear Country. First off, I've never heard of any of those. Bong Joon-ho took the stage 4 times at the 92nd Academy Awards in 2020 for his film Parasite. But only 3 of the 6 Oscars he's holding there are personally for him. He won for Best Original Screenplay, Best Director, and Best Picture. 2 of those 6 statutes, those were for the other producer and the other person who kind of co-wrote the screenplay with. Parasite also won Best International Film, but those wins go to the country rather than the director, which is something I find quite odd, but rules are rules, so in this case, South Korea ended up receiving that like 6 statuettes he's holding. I wonder what those countries do with their Oscars. Does anybody know? I mean, seriously, I would love to find out. So if you know, put it in the comments. Baker deserves immense respect for continuing to take on multiple roles in all of his films, sometimes even serving as cinematographer himself. For Anora, he did let Drew Daniels handle the cinematography, which ultimately, Anora did not get an Oscar nomination for cinematography. Perhaps if Baker had taken on that role, he might have secured himself a 5th nomination. I guess we'll never know. The 97th Oscars did mark Baker's first time ever being nominated. Nothing like walking away then with 4 Oscars. His previous film, The Florida Project, however, did earn William Dafoe a supporting actor nomination in 2018, so he's no stranger to the Oscar. On Sunday night, as soon as it was announced that Baker won the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay for Anora, I realized my predictions were going to be in trouble. And it was probably going to be an Anora sweep all night long. Now, there was a slim chance that the Academy would only award Anora for original screenplay while snubbing it elsewhere. I mean, that was kind of the talk. And again, I would like to apologize on behalf of Dak and Sprout that the data led us astray and we picked The Substance for Best Original Screenplay. I know, I apologize. They trusted the data. Next time, I guess I will not listen to the cat. After Baker got announced and there was no certainty that he would get another chance to speak, I was so glad that he took the time.
I want to thank the sex worker community. They have shared their stories. They have shared their life experience with me over the years. My deepest respect. Thank you. I share this with you.
All right, so Baker wins Best Original Screenplay. Now, when Baker ended up winning for film editing, I knew I was in trouble. With victories in both original screenplay and film editing, it seemed almost guaranteed that he would clinch director and picture for Anora as well. I mean, as any seasoned sports bettor will tell you, nothing is ever certain. But given the unpredictability surrounding this award season and the momentum of Anora, it felt 99.5% likely that Anora was going to sweep the night. And his acceptance speech for film editing was charming. He said he allows 3 people in the room, one of whom is...
And my dog, Bunsen. Yep, he gave me some pretty good notes.
Let's be honest, most of us would prefer the company of our pets while engaged in any activity rather than other people. Also, a shout out to him and his wife, Samantha Kwan, who is his co-producer, for managing to collaborate on numerous films without driving each other crazy and getting divorced. Now, knowing that Baker had 2 more acceptance speeches ahead of him, I was curious what else he might say. And I have to admit, for a guy to deliver 4 speeches, each one was refreshingly unique, heartfelt, and sincere. And then his mention of Quentin Tarantino when he got awarded Best Director was fantastic, particularly since Baker has openly shared in numerous interviews how he and his wife, Samantha, attended Once Upon a Time in Hollywood in a movie theater, and that's when he fell in love with Madison. Her performance was crazy and out there. And then a few years later, he went and saw Madison in Scream, and he left that theater convinced that he wanted her to play the role of Annie, which he specifically wrote for her. Baker certainly gave credit where credit was due.
Quentin, if you didn't cast Mikey Madison in Once Upon a Time, there would be no Anora. Thank you.
You could sense the sincerity in Baker's speeches and his genuine passion for film. Each time he got up there, all 4 of them, the smile on his face was just heartfelt. His love for what he does and for the impact movies have on people is evident. And he makes a vital point about the importance of keeping theaters thriving, particularly in the wake of COVID. I mean, we lost 1,000 screens, as he said.
When we can, please watch movies in the theater, and let's keep the great tradition of the movie-going experience alive and well.
I think everyone resonates with what he's saying here and supports it. But unless theaters can offer a more affordable experience for families, I fear that the theater experience may continue to face a decline. The distributor of Anora Neon made a clever move by initially releasing it in the theaters before transitioning to streaming. I mean, this independent film, to date, has grossed like $42 million, ended up winning the Oscar for Best Picture. I think Kwan's and Baker's remarks during their acceptance speech for Best Picture were spot on.
Tell the stories you want to tell. Tell the stories that move you. I promise you, you will never regret it.
Long live independent film. Yeah.
Sean Baker truly deserves all of the accolades. And as an Oscar viewer, I want to personally thank Sean Baker for keeping the combined length of all 4 of his speeches to just 19 seconds longer than Adrien Brody's Best Actor acceptance speech. Yes, Baker's total speech time from first word to last word was 5 minutes 55 seconds, while Brody's was 5 minutes and 36 seconds. Perhaps Kieran was onto something when he gave Brody a hard time during his SAG speech.
I don't think there's any way anyone can hold this for 45 seconds, which is the allotted time, Adrien Brody, 45 seconds.
Speaking of Brody, and we're talking about making Oscar history, he set an Oscar record that had stood for 82 years. Before him, the longest acceptance speech was delivered by actress Greer Garson in 1943 when she won Best Actress for her role in Mrs. Miniver. Her speech lasted 5 minutes and 30 seconds. Now, this was before award shows were televised, so we're a little uncertain if that's the exact length, but that's what Oscar history has. Perhaps somebody should remind Brody that the Academy Awards and the Oscars are not solely about him. There are 22 other categories that deserve recognition. There were some winners that didn't even get a chance to speak. Also, it might be better not to spend 12 seconds promising to be brief, only to go on then for another minute and a half.
Rodeo, but I will be brief. I will not be egregious, I promise.
If Sean Baker can cover 4 categories in 19 more seconds than you can cover 1, Brody, maybe we have an issue. I'm thinking they should have utilized Conan's idea.
If your acceptance speech goes too long, we'll cut to John Lithgow in the audience looking not angry, but slightly disappointed.
am pleased Brody won Best Actor. I believe he deserved it over Timothée Chalamet, and you guys know I've been saying it all season, and I said it in my short that I did not believe Chalamet's Seguin would have an impact on the Oscars. And luckily, for once, I was right. And honestly, I think the reason I always geared that way was that Brody appeared in 64% of a 3-hour movie. While Chalamet, always a good sport, I believe deep down had to know he probably wasn't going to win the Oscar. And I do love how he can just take the jabs, and you know what? He brings a certain level of entertainment to any award show.
Love that suit. You will not get hit on your bike tonight.
Chalamet!
And as I've said before, who doesn't love Timmy? While we're on the subject of performing lead role Oscars, let's just get right to it and discuss Best Actress in a Leading Role. Mikey Madison truly does deserve the win. Do not get me wrong, guys. She played her role beautifully. However, I would be remiss if I didn't express just a little bit of disappointment and sadness about Demi not taking home the Oscar. I was fully on board with #MoreWinsOscar and believed that Madison's BAFTA win wouldn't foreshadow what was to come. I guess I was wrong. I want to clarify, I am not one of those people, you guys, and you know this about me, who thinks that Moore should have received the Oscar as a career win or anything like that, or like she had such a good narrative that she should have won. I firmly believe that performers should be honored for the roles in which they are nominated for, not based on previous works, previous wins, or their narrative life story. To me, I genuinely appreciated Moore's performance in The Substance. I mean, I loved everything about her role, but I cannot deny the caliber of Madison's work in Anora. The funniest part to me now is how, like, the day after the Oscars, many people are arguing that Madison's win over Moore kind of highlights the very point that The Substance was trying to get through. They note the irony in how Moore delivered this exceptional comeback performance only to lose to a younger actress who's playing a sexy role. I mean, she's playing a sex worker. But honestly, I'm not sure if it's irony. And maybe that's because Alanis Morissette has definitely muddled my understanding of the irony concept.
It's like 10,000 spoons when all you need is a knife.
You all know that I loved Demi Moore's performance in The Substance. To me, it was captivating. It was Oscar-worthy. Her scenes, like from preparing for her date to her reaction to that late-night interview that Sue had when she destroys the kitchen, to me, it showcased her physicality, her comedic performance. Everything about her made her a serious contender. I understand why some people might not have voted for Demi Moore. And I think the fact that The Substance is a body horror film probably did go against her. And as those in my viewing party said, maybe the last 15 minutes was a little over the top and unnecessary. Ultimately, The Substance did end up only winning makeup and hairstyling out of its 5 nominations. I think no one will argue with the fact that The Substance definitely deserved the makeup and hairstyle award. As disappointed as I may feel about Demi losing, these were 2 very unique performances in completely different genres. I mean, each one of them was kind of showcasing their own strengths and weaknesses. I mean, you had a body horror, you had a comedy, and then let's not forget that we had the amazing Fernanda Torres in there. I love that this was the hardest category to predict, because partly I don't want everything to be predictable in the Oscars. I want there to be like some excitement. Plus, to me, this just shows how great the actresses were in films this year. I mean, think about how many actresses got snubbed from even getting into this category. I mean, you had Nicole Kidman for Baby Girl, Angelina Jolie for Maria, Marianne Jean-Baptiste for Hard Truths. I mean, we could go on and on. Given all that, I'm not entirely bothered by the fact that I lost my pick and Madison won. I think part of it is because any time in which I want to laugh, this one scene of Madison's will forever be a source of laughter for me.
You go fuck yourself!
Me go fuck myself, me fuck myself, you go fuck yourself and your fucking mother, motherfucker!
I get it, guys. The F word is said a lot in that movie. We looked it up and we thought it was 517, and I think that Conan joked that it was like 489. Either way, it's a lot of F words. Oh, and once again, a significant shout out goes to the sex worker community. Perhaps Anora winning 5 Oscars will finally shine a light on this community and help recognize that sex work is legitimate work that is distinct from trafficking. I digress. We will talk about that some other time. However, shout out to Madison for doing this.
To again recognize and honor the sex worker community.
Shout out again to Anora and their 5 wins. These next 2 categories we're going to talk about were pretty much considered sure bets throughout the entire award season. That is Best Supporting Actor and Best Supporting Actress. Culkin and Zeldana took home the Golden Globes, Critics' Choice, BAFTA, SAG, and ultimately the Oscar. I mean, basically, yep, they swept everything. No upsets there. And I believe that Culkin might have also made history as the first person to publicly call out his wife on a bet that concludes with them having a 4th child.
He said, "I will give you 4 when you win an Oscar." Oh, you remember that, honey? You do? Okay. Then I just have this to say to you, Jazz. Love of my life, ye of little faith. I love you. I'm really sorry I did this again. And let's get cracking on those kids. What do you say?
I guess that's what his wife gets for not believing he could ever win the Oscar. And what an adorable couple they make. Zeldana did actually make history.
And I am the first American of Dominican origin to accept an Academy Award, and I know I will not be the last.
I think it's terrific any time in which history can get made at the Oscars. However, one major issue I have with the wins of both of these performers in these respective categories is that their roles should never, ever have been classified as supporting. In fact, these actors, in my opinion, were either leads or at the very least co-leads in their films. While I recognize that the Academy doesn't enforce like a strict minimum maximum screen time for supporting versus leading roles, and they leave it up to the Academy voters to decide, to me it seems the Academy or the distributors or whoever are basing which like category the performer gets placed in based on who the story is about, right? Like, who does the film center around? Like, for instance, in Wicked, Part 1, Ariana Grande is deemed to be a supporting role because that narrative, Wicked Part 1, focuses on Elphaba. While in Wicked Part 2, For Good, supposedly Ariana Grande is going to be considered the lead because the spotlight shifts to Glinda. Well, similarly then, I guess the Academy considered Zoe Saldana and Emilia Perez as supporting, because the film centers on the character of Emilia Perez, who was played by Carla Sofia Gascon, who was nominated for Best Lead Actress, and she did make history by becoming the first transgendered performer to get nominated for an Oscar. However, it's worth noting that Saldana actually has more screen time than Gascon, 5 minutes and 31 seconds to be precise. Then there's A Real Pain, which, by the way, in my opinion, should have been nominated for Best Picture. That is definitely one that I recommend to everyone. However, in my opinion, it's hard to argue that Jesse Eisenberg's character is the focus of that film. I mean, the entire narrative revolves around Benji, right? And who is played by Kieran Culkin. And they're revolving it around like Benji and his like experiences of dealing with his grandmother's passing and other things in his life. Eisenberg does appear on screen for like 4 minutes, 23 seconds longer than Culkin. But a significant chunk of that time is spent searching for or talking about Benji. So to me, it's clear that Culkin was placed in the supporting category only because they knew there was no way he would win in the lead category. And the Academy tends to favor dramatic performances over comedic performances. In my opinion, both of these wins fall into what we refer to as like category fraud. I don't know. I mean, I'll get off my soapbox for now. Perhaps at some point, maybe I'll like delve deeper into this topic in a future video. For the moment, I guess let's just let the 2 of these people enjoy their victories. Now let's move on to Dune Part 2. That film walked away with 2 of its 5 nominations, taking home Oscars for both sound and visual effects, just like its predecessor, Dune Part 1. I still believe that Dune Part 2 is better than Dune Part 1, but Dune Part 1 won more Oscars. The one thing I loved about when Dune won is that you could really feel like the sense of camaraderie within the Dune team. Timothée Chalamet has like front row seats, right, to the Oscars, and you can see him like shaking hands with the winners as they come up. The other great part was how the winners made a point to express their gratitude to Denis Villeneuve in their acceptance speeches.
Oh, Denis Villeneuve.
Mr. Denis Villeneuve.
Denis Villeneuve.
Speaking of Denis, I get it. It's disappointing that he was snubbed for Best Director this year, just as he was in 2022 for the first. Some still speculate that the Academy might adopt that frustrating, annoying logic that they used to deny my girl, Ariana Grande, her chance at Best Supporting Actress. And that's that they're gonna wait until the end of the film series or like trilogy or whatever to recognize the incredible work. I completely disagree with this reasoning because, as I mentioned before and I've mentioned numerous times, if someone's performance deserves an Oscar, then they should win it, regardless of timing. Do you know that there's actually people who said that they did not vote for Ralph Fiennes for Best Actor because they thought that he had already won an Oscar for Schindler's List? What the hell does that matter? I mean, seriously, people, if you thought he was the best actor in Conclave, and he beat out Timothy, and he beat out Adrian and everybody else, vote for him. What the hell does it matter that he won an Oscar before? We might have to do a video on that also at some point. Now, The Brutalist. This, by traditional old school Academy standards, seemed like it would have been the strongest contender to win several major awards. It got nominated 10 times, yet it only walked away with 3 of them. I mean, the only major win it won was for lead actor, which was Adrian Brody. Seriously, guys, like we said, Brody dominated every award show except 6. This film did go on to win cinematography and original score. Cinematography was a close one. Original score, though, not a big surprise because throughout the entire award season, Daniel Blumberg continued to win as long as Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross were not nominated for challengers. Lucky for Blumberg that both the BAFTA and the Oscars snubbed challengers for Best Score. Another film that had extremely high expectations going into Sunday night was Conclave, and I believed in this film wholeheartedly that I picked it for Best Picture. It ended up only walking away with 1 of 8 of its nominations. It did win Adapted Screenplay, which, I mean, was largely predicted by pretty much everybody. Peter Strawn had claimed every key screenplay award all throughout the season. I mean, he even won the Golden Globes, and there they combine original and adapted together. No surprise there, he ended up walking away with it. I will still go on record as saying that Conclave is one of the top 10 best films of 2024. I mean, anyone who hasn't seen it, get on the ball, watch it right now. It's streaming on Peacock. Now let's talk about the biggest disappointment of the night. And no, I'm not talking about A Complete Unknown, who won 0 big fat goose egg of its 8 nominations. No. I'm going to talk about Amelia Perez, a movie that had the most Oscar nominations this year, 13 nominations. They ended up securing 2 of those 13 nominations, and no surprise, those 2 were what everybody expected. Zoe Saldana taking Best Supporting Actress, as we talked about, and El Mal winning Best Song. While the win for El Mal was anticipated, it still felt extremely frustrating to me. I mean, first of all, what in the hell was up with them singing during their acceptance speech? And on top of that, I'm really annoyed that Jacques Audiard is now considered an Oscar winner. Yes, I get it. He wasn't the sole winner. He won along with Clement DeCall and Camille, but still, he gets to go down as an Oscar winner. My only saving grace that evening was that they didn't let him speak. After El Mal won, internally, I wondered, honestly, what does Diane Warren finally have to do to snag an Oscar? Did she, offend the Academy in a past life? Is there some sort of seance, sage thing we need to do for her? I mean, she's had 16 nominations, 8 consecutive years in a row, and she's never had a win. It's ridiculous. I mean, and this time, she lost to a Spanish rap song performed by non-Mexicans. I loved how the Oscars were like, oh, we're gonna honor the LA firefighters more. We're gonna cut out Best Original Song performances, and also how can we top, Ryan Gosling's performance last year of I'm Just Ken. I'm just Ken. However, I believe the real reason that they didn't perform Best Original Song was because there was no way on God's green earth that Zoe Saldana or Selena Gomez could perform either one of their songs live on stage. Whatever the case might be, I totally agree with Diane Warren that they need to bring back the musical performances. And you know what? I hope she gets nominated next year. I hope she finally gets a win because I'm going to keep on believing in Diane Warren. Going back to Amelia Perez's horrible performance, I can guarantee you that there are some people, and Netflix especially, that are blaming its poor performance on the whole Carla Sofia Gascon tweet controversy. I don't buy that though one bit. Not at all. I mean, before Tweetgate, there was already significant dislike for this movie. In fact, I remember so many people being surprised that Amelia Perez even won Best Comedy or Musical at the Golden Globes. Challenger's director, Luca Guadagnino, walked out in disbelief when Amelia Perez was announced as a winner. I remember Oscar nomination morning when Amelia Perez received 13 Oscar nominations. Pundits, film Twitter were going crazy because nobody thought it was a good movie. There's a lot of speculation out there that, like, at the end of the day, the controversy probably hurt Emilia Perez most in the Best International Film category. However, I, again, disagree with that. If anyone looks it up, Emilia Perez is the lowest rated film on Rotten Tomatoes and Letterboxd to ever be nominated for Best Picture. And this was all before any of that tweet controversy arose. And if we think about it, the Academy nomination voting period all happened before the controversy. And let's remember that the Academy had already displayed their love and affection for the film I'm Still Here through its nominations. I'm Still Here was an international film from Brazil, and it garnered 3 Oscar nominations. Most people were expecting it only to receive the one for Best International Film. Instead, it got nominated for Best Picture and Best Lead Actress for Fernanda Torres. Let's be clear, the Academy sent a clear message nomination morning that Emilia Perez was no longer the frontrunner for Best International Film, especially when you have 2 international films vying for Best Picture. And usually it's easy to pick Best International Film, right? Whichever one of them is nominated in Best Picture, just give it Best International Film. But in this case, we had 2. I honestly believe that even without all the controversy, I'm Still Here was poised to win Best International Film. As I said in my predictions video, the Academy understood that there was no way they could honor I'm Still Here with either the Fernanda Torres win in Best Lead Actress or with a Best Picture win. This is how they recognized the film. They gave it Best International Feature Film. Jacques Audiard only has himself to blame for Emilia Perez only winning 2 awards. He should just feel fortunate he got to take home an Oscar at all, because I still disagree with that. I mean, how many of those lyrics do we really think he wrote for El Mal? While we're talking about Best International Film, I was beyond thrilled to see I'm Still Here win. Sure, it meant I got my prediction right, and many people were still picking like Emilia Perez, but that wasn't the main source of where my joy came from. I was genuinely happy to see this film receive all of its due accolades and all of the recognition that it deserves. I mean, this movie is based on a true story that's set in the 1970s, like Rio de Janeiro during Brazil's dictatorship. For those of you who don't know, this film revolves around the disappearance of Rubem Pavia, who was like a former congressman and an outspoken critic of the regime, and his wife Eunice Pavia, who was left with kind of dealing with the after effects and raising 5 kids. The director of this film, Walter Salles, poured his blood, sweat, tears, and heart into this film. It's actually inspired by like his childhood visits to the Pavia home, like he grew up in that area. Unfortunately, even though I'm Still Here wins Best International Film, Salles will not be recognized as an Oscar winner because, as we discussed, an international feature film ends up going to the country. This film, however, does make history as being the first ever win for Brazil. This film soared in Brazil. It actually became the highest grossing national movie since the pandemic. And it's also the first Brazilian film in like over 22 years to earn more than $4 million domestically, like in the United States. As Salles mentions in his acceptance speech,
it goes to the 2 extraordinary women who gave life to her, Fernanda Torres and Fernanda Montenegro.
A lot of this success can be credited to the powerful and dynamic performances of both the Fernandas, Fernanda Torres and her 95-year-old mother, Fernanda Montenegro, both of whom are now Oscar-nominated Best Lead Actresses. Montenegro made history herself back in the day by being the first ever Brazilian to be nominated for both a Golden Globe and an Oscar, and that was back in 1999 for her role in the movie Central Station, which, by the way, was also directed by Walter Salles. Although Torres didn't win the Oscar, she'll forever be celebrated for her historic Golden Globe victory, becoming only the 2nd Brazilian ever to be nominated and the first to win. Torres had big shoes to fill. I'm pretty sure that she has succeeded, and her mother could not be prouder. Wicked certainly did not perform as well as I initially anticipated after its November 22nd release. If we remember from my predictions video, I had estimated that it would win 6 Oscars out of 11 nominations, but it ended up only taking home 2 of its 10 nominations. Fortunately, though, those were 2 categories I had predicted it to win. So, got the dubs there. Costume design, production design. I mean, we all know how I felt about Nathan Crowley, right? I mean, that dude deserved it. 9 million tulips and 6 previous nominations. This one was his lucky number 7 as he walks away with the win. And Paul Tazwell for costume design made Oscar history.
I'm the first black man to receive the
Costume Design Award.
The dude received a 15-second standing ovation. I'm hoping Wicked Part 2 does better, and that all that stupid speculation about waiting until the end of the film series to honor Grande and potentially even Arrivo comes to fruition. Because if that actually happens and Arrivo wins, if it does end up happening that the Academy honors Arrivo next year, that would end up making her an EGOT winner. Although she would not be the youngest EGOT winner like she would have this year. I believe that title would still be held by like Robert Lopez by a month or so, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, I could be wrong. I'm usually not wrong though, guys. Just kidding. Moving on to the short film categories. The short film categories are critical for determining the accuracy of your Oscar predictions. You have to get these categories right. And this year, I truly thought I had a solid understanding of who would win. I don't know. I guess I was completely off. I'm baffled by the winners, as none of even my runner-up choices, which means not even my number 2, and in some cases, not even my number 3, won. I mean, come on, guys. In live action short category, I anticipated that the Academy would go like a more realistic, somewhat historical choice, right? I mean, my prediction was The Man Who Could Not Remain Silent. Oh my God, was I mistaken? I mean, they ended up going with I Am Not a Robot, which I watched. I enjoyed it. I mean, it featured kind of a unique and thought-provoking message, but at the end of it, it had a really unusual ending. Like, I don't really know what the Academy is looking for when they choose a winner. Then in the animated short film category, I mean, 5 Minutes BAFTA win, Wander to Wonder was the front runner for everyone, including myself. Only one that I thought might beat it and maybe could have won was the film Yuck. I picked Yuck as my runner-up solely because like some voters tend to favor films with like quirky little titles and stuff. However, the Academy surprised everybody by choosing In the Shadow of the Cypress. This animated film was created all through like hand-drawn artistry. It's beautifully done and it's free of any dialogue. It did successfully address a pretty weighty topic like PTSD. What I love about animation is that it has that like kind of unique ability to communicate messages that might be challenging to discuss through like other mediums. While this win was commendable, and again, I took the L, and I'm really glad that the filmmakers were able to make it from Iran as like they had just arrived supposedly like hours before the ceremony. The acceptance speech really, really crossed a line for me. I mean, when the male took the phone from the female and was like, no, you're screwing up. I mean, can we say misogynistic?
Miracle do happen.
No.
Oh my God.
Let me read it myself.
So yeah, glad it won, but dude, get a grip. Moving on to Best Documentary Short Film. That win ended up going to The Only Girl in the Orchestra. This wasn't entirely surprising to me, even though I didn't pick it. I guess it was kind of considered a favorite because it was easily accessible on Netflix, it had no subtitles, and it was neither divisive nor controversial. It was kind of just one of those feel-good documentaries that was created by a niece in tribute to her aunt. You can't really go wrong with that. So, cool, I guess. I took the loss. I really believed the Academy would have ended up going I Am Ready Warden for Best Documentary Short. I mean, that was my first pick, with the long shot, in my opinion, being Incident. I guess I should have gone with the more predictable, easier pick. But whatever. I took the loss. It's interesting to me that the Academy opted for like this lighthearted documentary short and then ended up selecting No Other Land as the winner for documentary feature film. No Other Land deals with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, so talk about divisive and the Academy taking a stand. No Other Land did also make Oscar history by becoming the first documentary to ever win without having a US distributor. And kudos to No Other Land for even being able to get nominated, as they had to screen their film at New York City's Lincoln Center for 1 week in order to qualify. I do think there were like half the pundits and people out there who did choose No Other Land to take this award. However, I ended up going with Porcelain War. For me, Porcelain War had garnered like more recognition and it was like less dark and gritty than No Other Land. I genuinely, just like Anora with sex workers, did not expect the Academy to take like this bold step by selecting a documentary that focused on the Israeli-Palestinian crisis. This film It's super powerful. It was shot over the course of like 4.5 years, and it follows a Palestinian activist who documents like the destruction of his community under Israeli occupation. And he ends up like forming this unexpected partnership with an Israeli journalist, the two that you saw on stage accepting the award. Even for those who have not seen the film, I believe we can all grasp the intent of it just by reflecting on the message conveyed in these two gentlemen's acceptance speech.
Can't you see that we are intertwined? That my people can be truly safe if Basel's people are truly free and safe? There is another way.
I understand that viewers often dislike when award shows become political, and I'm all for saying that award shows are entertainment. But in this situation, I guess I didn't find this one overly political, given the fact that it did win Best Documentary Feature Film, and it was about Israeli and Palestine. And can we all just appreciate the political jab that Conan made after Anora won for Best Film Editing?
You know, Anora's having a good night. Yeah. 2 wins already. I guess Americans are excited to see somebody finally stand up to a powerful Russian.
Come on, guys. I don't care what your political affiliation is, that joke was funny. I promised you all I would reveal the most exciting and thrilling surprise of the 97th Academy Awards at the end of this episode. What is that surprise? Here it is.
And the Oscar goes to Flo.
Duders, it happened. It really flippin' happened. Flo won the award for Best Animated Feature Film, triumphing over the ever so popular, ever so expensive The Wild Robot. That little black cat from Latvia that we've been loving all of award season took on the big mainstream animated films in a true David versus Goliath story. Flo, $3.4 million to complete that film, competing against a $78 million blockbuster. As I mentioned in my prediction video, that the international voting body could potentially outweigh the Disney Pixar vote. What did it do? Yes, it won out. While many pundits and people were still predicting The Wild Robot, they were underestimating that little black cat, that little Flo, which, by the way, the cat's name isn't actually Flo. They didn't actually give it a name right away. It was just called the cat. But I digress. While so many people were pointing to those precursor film festivals, guild awards that favored The Wild Robot as reasons to vote against that adorable little cat, I told you guys, don't listen to that. Those were the same film festivals and guild awards that last year chose Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse over The Boy and the Heron. And who ended up winning the Oscar last year? The Boy and the Heron. This marks the second consecutive year where the Academy has honored a little independent animated movie over a big blockbuster giant.
I hope that it will open a lot of doors to independent animation filmmakers around the world.
Flo's victory, along with Anora's win, highlights the vital space for independent films in the industry. By the Academy honoring these two films, I hope we see a growth of that independent cinema. Oh, and our little black cat that could also made history by becoming the first Latvian film ever to win. And it also received a nomination for Best International Feature. Come on, guys, how great could Flo do? And for those of you who are not familiar with where Latvia is, it's situated in like Northern Europe along the Baltic Sea. It neighbors Russia and is like part of the Baltic states along with like Estonia, Lithuania, which is exactly why Conan joked after Flo's win, hey, balls in your court, Estonia. You do have to love the reach of the Oscars telecast because like the day after the Oscars, Estonia's Prime Minister Kirsten Michal, something like that, congratulated Zabaldis, the guy who directed Flo, and all dear Latvian friends with the Oscar win on X, adding, "We've got you at Conan O'Brien. Estonia will do its best to catch up." Now, come on, how hilarious is that Conan gets called out by the Prime Minister? This film is about a black cat. And you know that statistically, most people don't even like to adopt black cats. You know why? Because they're not as photogenic. My cat Dak does take offense to that, and he is quite photogenic, as you can see. And so are you, Sprout. But seriously, this film is a dialogue-free 90-minute film, which took the director, Gint Zabaldas, 5.5 years to create. And what an amazingly nice guy.
Thank you to my cats and dogs. We're all in the same boat. We must overcome our differences and find ways to work together. Thank you.
I do love how he too is talking about overcoming differences. For those of you who don't know and maybe are just joining, Flo follows the survival journey of a solitary black cat after a catastrophic flood hit. And this little cat story struck such a chord with so many people. Like I said, my two cats, Dak and Sprout, have been cheering for Flo from the start. I was so incredibly thrilled when this won, as I've adored this film all throughout award season, and it's definitely on my top 10 films of 2024. Here's hoping we won't have to wait another 5.5 years for a new project from this talented director. I cannot wait to see what he will bring us. I will say it, guys, for one last time, as we have for all of award season, help control the pet population, get your pets spayed and neutered. We do it for Flo, guys. There it is, everyone. My reaction to the 97th Annual Academy Awards and all 23 categories. We all know the biggest winner of the night with an 83% win ratio, 5 out of 6 was Anora, and the biggest loser was a complete unknown because they went 0 for 8. I may have only predicted 15 categories correctly, giving me a 65% accuracy rate, which isn't stellar, but I'm okay with that. My competition took a little bit of a hit, but I'll keep using data and analytics when I can, bet on the long shots, root for the underdogs, and ultimately, I should probably trust my instincts and my gut a little bit more when making predictions. This award season was a wild ride with very few categories being predictable. I want to know, how did you all fare? What prediction percentage did you achieve? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to talk about it. This was my first award season while running a YouTube channel, and I'm incredibly excited about what's ahead. The 2026 award season is already underway, with the Cannes Film Festival just 9 weeks away. I'll be sharing film reviews, early Oscar predictions, and some specialty videos about cinema. I can't wait to keep discussing all things film and Oscars with you, so be sure to like and subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. All of the films, all of the categories through my Oscar-obsessed ADHD point of view. Thanks for joining, and until next time.